I think people need to realize that anxiety is a real thing.
I just get very shaky and jittery.
My heart starts racing.
My ear turns red and I sweat.
I get very hot. I get very nervous feeling I don't know what I'm gonna feel. It's almost scary because I'm scared if I pass out or am I gonna puke.
I would always get tripped up, on just the simplest things. Instead of multiplying, I would add.
I make sloppy mistakes because I get nervous and I'll do things like drop a negative symbol.
I'd start to doubt myself, thinking I did not know it when really I did. So it actually got to the point where I ran out of classes because I'd get so nervous.
I hadn't taken a math course in a while and it seemed very overwhelming.
I always had math anxiety. So even during high school and middle school, math was always my toughest subject.
So because I was this hippie, untraditional homeschool kid, math was the only thing that we did out of a textbook. Everything else we just learned kind of through living. So because of that, I think early on math became this one thing that it was something I had to do and I didn't want to do it.
In high school, I struggled with math. I was never really that strong. I would always have to work extra hard to get a good grade. I would have to meet with my teacher a bunch of times.
When I was in elementary school, I actually really enjoyed math. So when I moved to a new district for 8th grade, I was placed in their accelerated math class, and I would go in and ask the teacher for extra help. And about 2 months into the school year, she told me I was placed in the wrong math and that I was not an accelerated student. I remember being so embarrassed around my peers that I was in the class with. And so I think that just really changed my perspective on math.
I had to delay taking math here at MCC because of those anxiety experiences. What I did first was take a few courses, sort of get back into the rhythm of being in school again. And then I decided to go ahead and face math head-on with my anxiety.
I first took English classes and things like that I like. I definitely did postpone taking math classes.
I actually did not delay taking math courses at MCC. My mom made me push through and said that it will get better because professors are different than high school teachers.
I think the bulk of my anxiety was more after class when I was working on the homework and practicing what we had learned in class, because you practice 1 or 2 examples in class and then you have to go home and you're on your own.
This sounds weird, but the fear of the unknown, if I'm not going to know what we're learning in class or if I don't understand the homework, that's what makes me anxious because I don't know what I do at that point. The what if is what scares me.
Felt a little bit anxious when trying to prepare for exams.
I feel anxious in class when I do exam because if I got stuck in a certain problem, I couldn't think, and I'm a stubborn person and I don't want to just quit.
I really only feel what I would call anxiety when the test itself is happening and maybe in the night or morning before the test. And I get knots in my stomach and I get cold sweats and I have to remind myself to breathe. And then that will carry on through. And often I don't sleep well the night before a test either, and so that doesn't help. So then the next morning I'll be sleep deprived and trying to do last minute studying, and then starting to get all these negative thoughts running through my head. And so that's kind of the psychological aspects of the anxiety. And then my teacher will start handing the test out and I'll get all clammy and dry mouth, and that'll happen again when she hands the test back too.
I also found that a lot of my anxiety came the day of the test and the day before the test. I had practiced and prepared, and I always will go home and would work on my homework every day so that I wouldn't forget the stuff that we had learned. But then it was the day before, I'm oh my gosh, maybe I didn't do enough.
Having English as a second language, it definitely gives me a hard time in exam because I sometimes do not answer all the questions that I need to.
I doubt myself, and I think that's what made me do poorly on some math, because I thought I couldn't do it when really I could.
I definitely did think that I was bad at math. We often hear that at some point in their lives, girls get the impression that they're not as good at math as boys, and because I wasn't in a classroom setting, I don't know if I did get that or how I might have gotten it, but definitely I remember sitting at the table and just getting down on myself and just telling myself, I'm not good at this, I can't do it, I'm stupid.
I think at the time and when you're in that anxious moment, you don't recognize that it's anxiety or kind of irrational, but in thinking about it afterwards, I definitely, You know, you start recognizing that you're telling yourself you're not good enough, you can't do this, you haven't prepared enough. When you think about it rationally, you have prepared enough.
The thing is, there's no certain thing what anxiety is. Everybody feels something different. So knowing that you're not alone is the biggest thing, and that there are people around you that are also anxious.